Good morning. I'm out running some errands with Dean today. Dean had a heart doctor checkup, and so I'm in the parking lot at the hospital. There was a man just by here with a blower. If he comes by, I will stop and I'll remake this. But today's devotional was on Psalms 113 and 114. I love this verse in Psalms 113, 7 and 8. He raises the poor from the dust. He lifts the needy from the ash heap, to make them sit with the princes of his people. That's in the NASB, New American Standard Bible. But in the NIV it says, I like the NIV in this one sentence where it says, to make them sit with princes. In the NIV it says, he seats them with the princes of his people. And that's what God does when he delivers us from this world and he brings us into his kingdom, is we're taken out of the ash heap. And unfortunately, so many times we go back to the ash heap and he has to go back and get us, right? So as I did my study today, I saw a quote from Spurgeon that says, specifically on those two verses, when no hand but his can help, he interposes, and the work is done. It's true. When God intervenes, it's done. And then it says, it is worthwhile to be cast down, to be so divinely raised from the dust. Now, after it's over and we've been raised from the dust, we might say, oh, that was awesome. We wouldn't see the deliverance of God. We wouldn't see the miraculous things in our lives, though, unless we're delivered from dust. And so we have to be in dust for him to make that mighty deliverance. We're not really crazy about being in the dust part, but we certainly like the raising up, right? One of the other things that I found out about this chapters 113 and 114, is that they're part of three actual books, the Hallel or Hallelujahs, and 113 through 118. And they're about the Passover and the deliverance from Egypt. And so 113 and 114, the study that we had today, were actually songs that were sang before the Passover meal. And then Psalms 115 through 118 were sung after the meal. And so I think that's really cool. And when we look at them, because they're rehearsing, and there's so much value in rehearsing what God has done, so it so builds up our faith. And so this commentator, G. Campbell Morgan, he suggested and says, and it makes sense to me because they are in the Passover directions when you do a Passover, that these were the songs, S-O-N-G, Psalms, P-S-A-L-M-S, that were sang at the Last Supper. These were probably, the scripture tells us in Matthew 26:30 and Mark 14:26, that they sang a hymn. And these were probably the hymns that they sang. Can you imagine Jesus knowing that he was going to go and die, talking about the Red Sea being pushed back and the water from the rock and all the different things that these chapters extol. In 114, there's a verse that says, the one who sits enthroned on high, who stoops down to look on the heavens and the earth, that he is great and mighty as he was in heaven, because we know that he was there, because the beginning in Genesis, it says the word, who is Jesus, was there at the very beginning. He had all that power, and he discussed, let us make man in his own image. So the us part included Jesus, and he had all of that power. I was telling my daughters about the scripture in Job, when Job is kind of arguing with God, and God says, well, come up here and let's talk about it. Were you there when I measured out the sea and I gave it the boundaries? And it always fascinates me that God puts the boundaries for the sea. And we think about that mighty power and the awesomeness of who he is. And then Jesus chose to leave all that and become a human because of us. And so it's really, he went from his glory and he went really truly to dust, because, there's so much in that picturing, because we are dust. Our bodies are made out of dirt. I've always said, give yourself a break. God knows we're just dirt, right? These bodies are just dirt. And so he came and put himself in that dirt form and did what he needed to do to make a way for us to have a relationship back with God himself. So very wonderful. It's Psalms 114 talks about Judah going first, and so we know that Judah they went first in as they led Israel. Judah always is a symbol of praise. Judah means praise, so praise has always got to go first. And so these are great scriptures to go back and rehearse the things that God has done in the Old Testament. I think it's also important, which I've mentioned several times, and I will say over and over again, there's so much power in rehearsing what God has done in our lives. So I want to encourage you to do that, to start thinking about all the things that God has done, who He is, the vastness of who He is, and the great things that He's done in your life.